Next, from the state capitol, we hear about a proposed bill to set mandatory prison time for those that violate the concealed carry bill. This proposal would have set a minimum of 1 year in jail for even first-time offenders. After these interviews were conducted, the bill's sponsor, Representative Mike Zalewski, changed the bill to make the punishment less severe. We begin our coverage with comments on the bill from Todd Vandermeide, a lobbyist for the NRA of Illinois. This runs about 8 minutes.
Todd Vandermeide, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel as we're here for the fall veto session. And you obviously represent the NRA and handle gun issues. What are some of the issues you're following while you're here at the Capitol?
Well, we've got a trailer bill on the concealed carry law to watch and see how we make some tweaks to that. And then we also have the mayor's mandatory minimum proposal.
Give us a little background if you want on both of those.
Well, the legislature passed a carry law in response to a Supreme Court or an appellate court decision from earlier this year or last year, and now there's some tweaks that they need to make to it to catch a couple of glitches and fix a couple of things like in the fingerprinting process and some other stuff. So that's being worked out, some technical details. But then we also have the mayor's mandatory minimum proposal to where the mayor wants that anybody that gets caught carrying a gun would then be facing a mandatory 1 year in jail.
Now, gets caught since they have concealed carry. Is it that would apply to people carrying a gun that don't have a concealed carry permit?
Correct. You could have a couple of different situations. You could have somebody from out of state who doesn't understand that we don't have reciprocity in the carry law. It could be a person who couldn't afford to get a carry permit. They would be facing a year in jail and a felony conviction. And
you obviously think that that's unfair. Should there be any kind of a penalty from your estimation if someone were to violate the concealed carry permit?
Well, there are penalties built into the concealed carry law for people who have a license who make a mistake, but a mistake should not get you a year in the penitentiary or 3 years in the penitentiary, depending on what it is. Now, if you want to deal with violent felons, if you want to deal with prohibited persons, that's one issue, but this goes beyond that.
The Bill 1342, that's House Bill 1340, Senate Bill 1342. And who's the sponsor of that?
Representative Zalewski.
And what specifically would that be doing?
That would be that, first-time offenders would be facing a felony, a Class 4, which is the current law. However, they're also mandating that you would have to do 85% of whatever time you're sentenced to. So, 85% of a year is what it'll work out to be.
Roughly 10 months if you're...
Probably.
Where does that stand as far as when you're a lobbyist? I would guess you go around and constantly talk to members and kind of count heads and what the vote is. So
it's been fluid. This is amendment number 3. There have been a lot of talks going on around this. And so, it's a fluid situation, but we don't think people who make a mistake or who have to choose in how they're going to defend themselves should be facing 1 to 3 years in the penitentiary.
Representative Mike Zalewski, thanks for joining us again on the Illinois Channel. And one of the issues that's going around, as viewers will remember, there was the concealed carry bill was passed early in the summer, I guess, actually, not in the spring even, but that has now become the law. It was mandated by a federal court judge to have that passed. So Illinois became the last state in the union to have concealed carry. You have a bill that, as I would understand it, is meant to address some of the concerns about some aspects of the bill and the implementation. How would you characterize your bill?
It's more of a public safety piece of legislation. What we said in the spring was that there's a constitutional right to carry a weapon under the Second Amendment. However, there is a need, in my opinion, to strengthen our gun laws based on some of the instances we see where gun offenders find themselves back on the streets in short amount of time.
Now, as I understand, what the law would do would set, among other things, a minimum amount of jail time, a minimum mandatory amount of jail time if someone was in violation of the concealed carry bill?
Well, no, it has more to do with carrying an illegal loaded weapon. So if they're not a holder of a valid FOID card and they don't have a concealed carry permit and they're carrying a weapon, what we would do is for first-time offenders say you're going to get 85% of the sentence the judge imposes, and for felons you're going to get a 4-year minimum in prison.
On the 85% of the sentence that a judge imposed,
For a first-time offender of a 1-year sentence.
is there a minimum amount of?
So that would likely be in the range of almost a year. So 85% of a year is probably 9 or 10 months.
Now, what would you say to those, and you and I both know Todd Vandermine with the NRA, and he was saying, someone might be in from out of town, they don't know that there's no reciprocity, maybe someone, we had a member of the legislature trying to go through an airport with a gun. I mean, sometimes people make mistakes. What would you say to those who say that is an extreme to have a year sentence for someone who may just be making a mistake? They're not really a criminal.
Don't forget, they still have to be convicted of the crime. So there has to be proof beyond a reasonable doubt that they weren't a lawful gun owner. So if they present proof of a valid FOID card or a concealed carry permit, it's likely the prosecutor wouldn't be able to meet his burden of proof.
If somebody were in from out of town and they didn't know, they read about the amount of murders that are happening in Chicago, they bring a gun for protection, they didn't, maybe they got a concealed carry in all the other states. Not to put you on the spot, but here, wouldn't we be in danger maybe of sending someone who's a father of a family and he's just in for town on business, and all of a sudden he goes to prison because he's carrying a gun and he was in violation of the law, but maybe just based on ignorance?
I just think, again, in that instance, that defendant's going to be able to provide a pretty compelling defense that they were not violating the law, and they're not going to be convicted of the crime of unlawful use of a weapon.
Now, what was the impetus for this? You say
the city of Chicago feels as though they see repeat offenders continually churn through the criminal justice system in a way that prevents them from adequately protecting the streets of Chicago.
Would you, not to get you to negotiate, has there been any discussion to say, let's change some aspects of it? If someone already has a felony conviction and then we catch them again, that we might say,
From where this bill was originally drafted to where we've come, is it's been substantially and comprehensively narrowed. The cost was estimated to be about $100 million over 10 years. Almost $1 billion. We think we've cut that cost in half. We've protected first-time offenders by saying they won't see an enhanced penalty. So I think we've really responded to the worries of my fellow colleagues.
And just in a wrap-up statement, what is the social good that would be achieved if this became law?
Protecting the public safety of the citizens of Illinois, which is a core mission of the General Assembly.
And again, it would apply across the state, not just Chicago.
Across the state.
All right, Mike Zalewski, thanks for joining us.
Good luck to you, man. Take care.
You're watching the Illinois Channel.